Carter Kowalczyk here with the OAI.
Max Wardell, Overhead Athletic Institute. We're going to get right into a video. We're going to actually look at hamstring flexibility tests. And I wanted to know, Carter, what do you typically use to test hamstring flexibility? What's your first test?
Typically, I'll just have them put their feet together and do a bend and reach test.
Bend and reach. And I like to, a lot of times, use an active hamstring elongation test because I have them on the table after looking at their passive glenohumeral range of motion. So we'll kind of highlight both of those tests and how you can apply them to look at hamstring flexibility with your athletes or with yourself. And then we'll also go through one of our favorite assessments that we actually use if there's some discrepancy between these tests or if we actually want to look at some more dynamic flexibility later on.
So with the bend and reach, I just typically like to have Max put his feet together first and then bend over and touch his toes. So here I'm looking at a couple things. First, I'm looking at his hip flexion, and minimally we like to see 70 degrees. You can come up. Minimally we like to see 70 degrees. Optimally we like to see 90 to 95 degrees, but at a bare minimum we want to see 70 degrees. Do it one more time for me. Another thing we're looking at is how he gets down there. So right here, Max has a pretty normal curvature in his back. So with some athletes we see there's a big hump at his thoracic region or even lumbar region. And we know that they're getting through there, not through their hamstrings, but through their back.
And you know, something that you did there that I really like, Carter, is that you had me bring my feet together so you can actually look at more of the biceps femoris length as well, which we know is so important for pitching. And we'll kind of highlight that in some of our future tests here. One thing I wanted to ask you, Carter, based on how you did this test, is do you hold it for a prolonged period of time, or do you just have them go right in and right out, or a couple times? How do you typically do that in terms of duration?
Yeah, typically I like to have them hold it from anywhere from 5 to 10 seconds, ideally 6 to 7 seconds, so we can activate the inverse myotatic reflex and hopefully shake out some of that stiffness if they were sitting in the car for a while and have their hamstrings a little bit more relaxed so we can get a true test.
Yeah, let me try that one time. You know, I'm actually feeling like after holding it for that period of time, I'm getting that flexibility, and I think that's really important, especially when athletes are traveling to us from sometimes considerable distances, to actually look at that increase in flexibility if they are a little stiff. So I like how you did that, Carter. Okay, so now I want to actually go through our unilateral hamstring extensibility test. We're going to look at elongation actively here. I'm going to have Carter keep both legs straight, and he's going to lift one leg. And I'm looking at 75, 80 degrees of hip flexion here, making sure he's not lifting too much here. I can pin this leg down. And consider that there is a little posterior rotation of the pelvis, so I'm typically looking for around 90 degrees with that rotation.
So what would you say, Max, if during the stand and reach test I had 90 degrees, but on here you saw, let's say 70, 75 with one of my legs?
So I would look at some more dynamic flexibility in different ways. So they might be doing something a little bit differently laying down versus standing. And if I see the opposite, where they can get to 90 degrees actively here and they still move straight into straight hip flexion, but there they only got 70, maybe I'm thinking the left leg or the right leg, whatever the case may be, is a little less flexible than the other leg. So I have to test them both, and that's why this variation is very good, because I can look at it individually. And if there's still discrepancy here, I'm going to actually have them go right into the next test, which we're going to show here in a second, which is more of a dynamic moving test where I'm looking more at subjective things and how do they move through the motion compared to a quantitative test like this where I'm looking for more degrees of hip flexion. So now we're going to go through our next progression here, and this one we're going to kind of look at how this athlete moves. Because it's important to know when they're actually doing athletic movements, how are they going to move through that hamstring extensibility? If they're stiff and they don't want to go through it, this will really illuminate that. Even though they may get down fairly far at the hip in the standing toe touch because gravity's assisting them. So for Carter here, I'm going to have him go with the left leg up on the table. You can have him go into plantar flexion, so you take out the sciatic and tibial nerves, and you're stretching more through the hamstring. And from here, I'll just have Carter kind of reach forward and reach towards my hands, and he's reaching with both hands, and I'm just seeing how he does it. And then Carter's been instructed on this, so he's keeping that nice flat back as he goes through, which is something I actually like to see with this. And then I'll have them just go as far as they possibly can. So just kind of go as far as you possibly can, Carter. Reach, 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 reach. And Carter does it through the hip, which is something we're looking for. Once we see that and we say, okay, he can move through that hamstring flexibility, I'm going to have him go a little bit rotational here to look more at that biceps femoris. He's going to go out and in. So I want you to go 5 times out and in. Pick up the pace as you go. Now I'm looking at, does he rotate his leg? Does he lean to the side? Does he shift out more into abduction? So if he shifts his hips that way towards the wall, he's actually gone into more abduction and taken stretch off that lateral hamstring. If he rotates externally, he's done the same thing effectively. So having him rotate and reach over here rotates his pelvis, makes him stretch that side a little bit more on the lateral side, the lateral aspect of the leg. So I'm just looking at things, do they do it all through lumbar, even when I've instructed them to keep extended through the lumbar and thoracic spine. If you like this video and you like these stretches, let us know, because we're always trying to produce content that you guys like, and we want to know what you guys are looking for. So if you did like this, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We're going to put more out on testing different aspects of flexibility and strength, but we're also going to be putting exercise and flexibility interventions to improve those things, as well as the biomechanical information we're putting out. So thanks guys, we'll see you at the next one.